Today, the Data Science Incubator continues a series about working with Git from the terminal. Last time, we created a new Git repository with the commands you see here on screen, and today we're going to be working with Git status. So let's go to an RStudio session here, and before we work, remember that last time it was a little uncomfortable to work on the terminal from RStudio Cloud because the prompt was so long. So I kind of ran out of space in here and I started typing commands like git status, and then it would kind of wrap under it. So it was uncomfortable. So how can we change that? Well, the terminal is very flexible. If you are in a bash terminal, you can use ps1 as a variable that allows you to define whatever you want this prompt to be. So it could be, I don't know, pound and greater than if you want it, and then the prompt will change to that. But that's okay, but not that useful. Instead, we could use some of the very special commands, like for example, backslash great capital W, and that will give you the name of the base directory where you're standing at, which is basically this little tilde here. So that's nice. We're gonna use that plus the $sign plus a space, which is the a way to work comfortably. So let's record that command with the up arrow. So we are going to use \W plus this $sign symbol and a space. So let's see how that looks like. That's what I want. Right. So now we are in home. I believe here we have no recipe directory, so let's create it now. So before we used it, in last session we used make dir, which is a terminal command to create the directory recipe. Then we changed into it, and then we initialized a Git repository. Today we're gonna do it a little differently. So we can do directly git lowercase git init and recipe. So if we git init can take the name of a directory to directly initialize a repository there. So now we need to change into it, so the cd recipe, and as you can see now we are in that directory. So where we are at is right here. So let me also kind of navigate to here. Let's also set this as a working directory. So we are on the same page in R and the terminal. So this looks empty, but it's not fully empty. If you look for hidden files, you will see that there is a .git folder which contains all the information that it uses to keep track of what it does. But let's go back to the recipe directory. So usually you don't interact with those files directly. You just interact with them through the Git interface just by typing commands. Okay, so what we want to do now is to ask for what's the status of this Git repository. How do you do that? With Git status. So Git status gives you information about any file that might be untracked. So something that you haven't added specifically to the Git repository, or files that have been changed or have been added, or a bunch of information that is useful to you. But it's usually divided in two sections, or it is divided in two sections that I'm going to demonstrate in a moment. So to reflect on what we read here, it is telling us, the command is telling us that we are on a branch. That is a concept that we're going to discuss later, that is called master, which is the default. Also shows a little message, which is a message that was created by Git when we initialized this repository. And it's also telling us that there is nothing to commit. So commit is this idea of taking a snapshot of the story of the history of your project. And there is nothing to be committed, really. And it is giving us some hints about what we might want to do. It is telling us that we can create or copy files and then use git add to keep track of them. So let's do that. So for that, we're gonna first expand this way, move here a little bit. I want to kind of be able to show you what I'm doing on the terminal, a little bit of the files, and also a little bit of the instructions that I'm following. So git status gave us something similar to this. There's nothing to commit, but we are going to now create a file. We are going to add a new file. So I'm going to copy this text here, copy, I'm going to create a new file with, in this case, I'm coming here to the interface that RStudio provides. I'm going to choose a text file, and I'm going to paste the text that I copied from the right. I'm going to save this inside the recipe folder or Git directory now with the name instructions.txt. I hit enter and the file now appears here, and I can close it really because it's already done. And now I'm going to add a second file, copy, doing the same thing. Text file, I'm going to paste, I'm going to click save, and I'm going to call it ingredients.txt in this case. Scroll down, save. 2 files have been added. So does Git know about that? Sure it does. Let's do git status. And now you can see in red, these files are appearing in the area where it says untracked files. So these files appear in red because they are still in a kind of dangerous mode. If you do nothing about them, Git will do nothing. So Git won't track files that you don't explicitly tell it to track. So imagine you are climbing a wall. Now you are climbing with no rope, basically. So what you want to do is to add these files first to the staging area. Remember, using the analogy of the taking a picture that we saw last time. First, you frame into these files to tell Git this is going to be part of the next snapshot, and then you add the commit. And how you do that? Well, it's not all that difficult. All we need to do here is to read what information Git is prompting us here. So let me expand this a little bit, like that. Trying to drag this. Well, let's leave it at that. So if we want to include these files to the next commit, we just use git add and then the name of the file or files ... So let's do that. For example, we can do git add and then ingredients. I'm not going to type the whole thing. I'm going to just type a few keystrokes and then tab, and that will be auto completed. And I could now run enter, but I could also add more files because there is ... right? So I could do now instructions.txt. What I did is I pressed ENST and then tab, and it was auto completed. And now I run enter and git status again. Let's see what happens. Okay, what we now have is a different thing. So we now have color green, because these files are already in the frame of the camera, are ready to be committed. If we wanted to remove any of these files from the staging area, from the frame of the camera, to exclude it from the next commit, we can use the commands that Git suggests. We can use Git, for example, git remove -- cache and the name ingredients.txt to exclude it from the staging area. So what's the Git status now? Well, one file is on the staging area and the other file is not, right? It's untracked. So if we add a new commit, the only file that could be committed is this one here. But no, we want to add all the files. So let's do that again. Git, if you want to move this file from here to here, we just follow the instructions that we see here. So git add and the name of the file ingredient.txt. Right? And that will add it. Another way could be to say, hey, everything in this working tree with a symbol dot. But if you do that, always do later a git status, because there is always the risk that you add, for example, private information that you shouldn't add. And if you do that by accident, and if you commit that by accident, that's totally fine. Just notify someone that can undo that change and rewrite the Git history, or do it yourself, as you will learn in later sessions. That was a note that Alex did when we were working live, but unfortunately I forgot to press record for that video. So I'm recording this off, not live. But thanks, Alex. That was a great comment. So it is very common, unfortunately, to commit things that shouldn't be committed. The way to avoid that is just to check the status a lot, to be mindful about what you add and what you don't. But if you make a mistake, we all do. Just either know how to fix that, or quickly tell everyone else or someone that can help you undo that change. Because even if you delete the file will stay in the history. So the file may have disappeared from the latest commit that you see on your working directory, but it is in the history. So someone malicious could go back in the history of Git and recover private information, for example, passwords and things like that. So be careful with it. Okay, so we are ready to create our first commit. But before I do that, I wanted to show you how you go about learning Git through Git. So one way is, as we have been doing now, is just by following the prompts and doing what we are prompted to do. But another way is also to explore the help files. So for example, we use the command git status. Let's recover that with the up arrow, git status. And now if we do -- help, that's one way to do it. We get to the help file and we exit the help file following the instructions at the bottom with a Q. Another way would be to do git help, which is the command itself, and then the name of the command that you want help for, right? So that was a little fast, sorry. Up arrow git help status will send you also to the help file. How you read that? Well, there is a little bit of a description, but then a synopsis, which reads as follows. Everything here that is just text is compulsory. So git status, to run the command git status, of course, you have to type git status. But then you may not run anything else, and that will work as we just did before. We were using just git status and something useful we got. But also you have options. If you want, they are not compulsory, but you could add a bunch of options. What options could you add? Well, for example, you could add these options here. All of these are options. For example, the -s or -- short, so S is the short for short, gives you the output in the short format. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, let's exit this with a Q, and now up arrow 2-3 times, so I get to I'm navigating back to the history of commands, not the git history, but the history of commands in the terminal. And I recover the git status command, and now I do space -s to get the status, but in short form. So this is a very succinct way, right, of getting something similar to what I got here, right? So that's why -s stands for short. Let's clear what we see here with the command clear from the terminal, or also with Control L. That's another alternative. So once again, git status without the flag gives you this long form, and with the flag gives you this form. So S is the short for short. Both return exactly the same thing. So that's a gist about how you could go about interpreting Git help files. So let's go back actually to that help file, because there is another option that you can use here. So you can separate your first options with this optional also -- separator, and then the specific path that you want to explore the status for. What does that mean? Okay, so it means that our git status so far has been for the entire Git repository. But what if we ask specifically for the file ingredients? Okay, then we specify ingredients and we get the status just for that. And notice this -- flag that separates a specific path is something very, very, very common in Git, and you will see that in many other commands that include that. So a lot of the really cool power that Git has comes from knowing these flags and how to do things that you can do either at the general level on the repository or at specific level into a complete subfolder in your Git directory or a file, specific file. So that was it for Git status, and now we're ready to create our first commit. Git commit has, of course, its help file. It's a very long help file because there is a lot that you can do with Git commit. But in short, the most important command is the -m, because it is what allows you to, after it, write a little message. Message goes here. So that message, just to stick with the lesson, we're going to copy it from here. We want to add this message. I'm going to copy, and I'm going to paste it here. In the terminal, in the bash terminal, sometimes I think that C Control V or Command V command won't paste stuff. Instead, you need to press Shift Inst. So I mention it because it is a common struggle and a simple solution. So there you go. So git commit -m with a message gives you creates a commit, like the one that you're gonna see soon. But an alternative and one that might get you in a little bit of trouble is to not use any other flag, so do just git commit. In that case, Git will open a text editor for you to force you to write a commit message, because the commit message is compulsory. So if you don't add it with the flag -m here, then you will be prompted to something like this. And which specific text editor, if it's Notepad or Vim or Nano, whatever, that depends on how it is configured on your computer. But this that I'm showing you here, I'm showing you on purpose because it is quite scary. The default text editor for many systems is V or Vim, which is not intuitive at all. So when you appear there, you can start typing your message. You can paste, for example, the text that I copied from before, adding ingredients and instructions. And notice how when I pasted that, I see here the text that says insert. That is because Vim has two modes, the insert mode and the what's called the normal mode, which is quite abnormal actually, that allows you to use the keyboard to, instead of writing text, to actually call specific commands of this text editor. So I'm showing you this precisely because it's tough. So if you are in this situation, how do you kind of exit this? Okay, first you need to go to the normal command by pressing escape. So you press escape, that insert thing disappears, and then you have to press shift, and column will start entering here some commands that allow you to interact with the file system. For example, I do Q, and bank will exit this without doing anything. We'll forget about this file, this text file has been opened. But if you want to save it and actually create the commit, then you could do Q and W. So W will save and Q would quit. And Q could quit and bang will quit without saving, right? So Q, bang, exit without doing anything, Q, W, exit, saving. When you save this file, the commit will be finished. So I don't want to do that. I want to exit without saving. Git status should show me the same thing that I showed before. And now I want to create a git commit with the message myself here. I'm gonna paste the text that I copied from there. And this is the commit message that I want. So I just created the commit. What I'm gonna do now is to clear the console with Ctrl L and ask for what's called the log. So the log is going back to that album that contains all the pictures that you took in the history of your life and looking at those pictures. So git log will then give you the latest of the pictures that you took. We'll give you all the album. In this case, we have only one commit, and that's why it's what is showing us here. But if there were more commits, it would show more. So what we see is a unique identifier for this commit. It is aimed to be a universally unique number. It's very hard for the two commits to be exactly the same. It includes information about who wrote it, what's their email, and when. And also a message that is the one that you gave to the flag -m, right? So the commit message, the information about the date, the author, and the SHA, all of those are information that can be mined into the in the Git repo, and are extremely useful for exploring what happened in the past of this project. So it is super important to write meaningful commit messages, and we're going to discuss that later. But the reason is not because we are just stubborn. It is because the information that is associated to each commit, the metadata of each commit, is extremely useful for you, for your future self, and also for your colleagues to understand what is where and how to basically recover all the information and to do things like that. Okay, I think we are approaching the end of what we covered today in the ds-incubator. Okay, a couple of flags for git log. So git log can get a little long when you have many commit messages, and some of this information, like this very long SHA, is not all that exciting. So you can do git log minus one line to do something similar to what you did before with git status minus s. So basically you'll get a shorter version of this log. Okay, you don't have all the information, but the cool stuff is there. You have the SHA to identify this specific commit, this unique identifier of the commit, and you have at least the information about what happened in this commit, the message that you wrote. Another one that is useful is -stat. There is a lot of useful flags really in log, but there's a couple that are commonly used and are included here in the lesson. So you can combine flags. You're not limited to just one. You can do the git log on one line and also request for the stat. The stat will give you like statistics of the files that changed. In this case, the changes were all additions. That's why you see +++, because 5 lines were added, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to the file instructions.txt. And in this case, 3 lines were added to the file ingredients.txt. 2 files changed, 8 insertions in total, all additions. Right, so that's how you interpret this git log. So let's clear this and run it again, just to have a clearer view of kind of where is our stopping point. So yeah, we're gonna leave it here because that is what we covered in the live part of the ds-incubator, and next time we're gonna discuss git diff and from then onward. So that's it for today. Thank you and see you next time.